I mean, listen, I like to answer people's demands. I like to come through with what they ask me for.
Welcome to my second Mewgenics video, or should I say Twogenics? Alright, anyway, now that I've finished Ninja Gaiden 4, I felt it was time to make another video and go over the classes and many of the skills that we've seen so far. Before we get started though, I want to say a quick thank you for all the positive comments on my first video, even if my tier list was a bit divisive. I plan to continue making Mewgenics content leading up to and past release, as well as maybe branching out into some other stuff. I've already got some good recommendations, such as a video on Isaac's art style. Also, if you've never heard of Mewgenics, you might enjoy this video all the same, but if you feel you're lacking too much context, I will have my first video being a full overview of the game in the description. There are already so many combinations that have been mentioned in developer gameplay / interviews, and others that are sitting there waiting to be analyzed and theory crafted. I went through the first two gameplay reveals in Tyler Gleal's first stream and screenshotted every single skill and passive with a description that I could. Although I won't be covering every single one today, we've got a lot to go through regardless, so strap in. First of all, let's go over the class's basic attacks. Let's go through them in order of callers / unlocks on the class selection screen. The fighter's attack is aptly named melee attack. No nonsense, no utility, just some damage. This is in line with many fighter skills, which are simply, I hit you very hard now. Lobshot is the hunter basic attack, which allows you to shoot over units to get to your intended target, with the catch of the hunter class having a minimum range, meaning them not being able to attack units within 2 tiles. A lot of the hunter's kit is about spacing or positioning and ensuring that you use your other cats to play keep away. The mage's basic attack is a simple ranged attack, with the upside of being half magical and half physical damage. Magical damage is of course a mainstay of the mage, as well as needing range due to its lower level of tankiness, although we will see later that they do have ways to gain immunity to different elements. The tank's basic attack is a push attack, playing into the role of being a melee frontliner who manipulates the battlefield by displacing enemies and crowd controlling them, or if you're unfamiliar with the term, to stop them from taking actions. The Cleric's melee attack / heal is the first attack that we see that has alternate uses with utility in mind. This is largely indicative of the class as they are focused on healing and buffing, though they also have damaging abilities that you can lean into. In addition, the heal gives you a way to not spend mana to heal, though only in melee range, but to my knowledge that is not available to any other class outside of the lunchbox or passives like generate meat. I don't have a screenshot of the thief's basic attack here, he's just that sneaky, but it's a ranged projectile attack, though I'm not sure of its properties. Already there's a differentiation between the classes, but let's look a little bit different into the specifics of some potential combos. To give you an idea of the fighter's individual capabilities, let's look at some punches. All of these are focused around damage, with minimal utility outside of Thunder Punch, but you can see the theming of the class best in Rage Punch, where you turn taking damage into dealing damage. Looking at some of the passives, this theme becomes more apparent, wanting to be up close to deal maximum damage and being rewarded for getting in there and bruising. A lot of your defense and utility will come from inserting yourself to what could be fatal encounters for other classes. Interestingly as well, we can start to see some builds coming together. Rage Punch with Hulk Up is an obvious synergy, giving you both damage and access to more targets via movement speed. Looking at Merciless though, it could combo with Big Punch to give access to tankiness immediately and a follow-up with movement to use your basic attack. This promotes a playstyle of burning through mana to take down a few enemies on the opening turn, whereas Rage Punch, Hulk Up, and Underdog maintain their value throughout the fight. It will of course be situational, which ends up being better, but it could often be advantageous to remove threats immediately as opposed to being able to thrive in the middle of them for extended periods. We'll move to the Hunter for now, although more fighter skills will come up in discussions of team comps or wacky combos with neutral moves later. The Hunter is a ranged class with several abilities that can control the battlefield, letting you deal with enemies from afar. As you can see with Snipe, we have the returning theme from the Hunter's basic attack of specific spacing required for the ability. Arrow Flurry is a ranged attack that has variable accuracy, which will also play into some of the passives. Spawn Pooter Friend and Bear Trap both work as utility and damage sources, allowing you to play with the turn order with another unit, block space on the battlefield, and cut off important chokes that enemies try to make their way through. Looking at some passives, we start to see some of the emerging synergies for the Hunter. Bullseye can be used to guarantee the hits of Arrow Flurry, while having the added benefit of always hitting on normal attacks as well, even if enemies have a chance to evade or are standing in tall grass that gives them 50% evasion. Quiver allows you to play the spacing game, using your mana to set up traps and minions and the like in the backline while waiting for enemies to come to you. Thorn Arrows creates dangerous terrain for enemies, and Rubber Arrows gives you a reliable source of AoE, or area of effect, meaning targeting an area rather than an enemy, if you're unaware. Speaking of area of effect, next up is a strong contender for the best class for it, the Mage, who can burn, explode, freeze, and zap the battlefield. Because the Mage is a class that focuses on intelligence and charisma, the two main stats that increase mana, the resource for using skills and casting spells, they typically have the highest cost and impact abilities. Meteor Storm and Mega Blast are both AoE skills that can provide significant damage to multiple enemies at once, which plays into the mana stacking playstyle of the Mage. Meteor Storm also causes fire on the map, which minorly plays into the more elemental effect playstyle of something like Freezer Burn, giving multiple ailments to enemies. Elemental effects include fire, which does damage over time to enemies, lightning, which can arc through the water and has a chance to stun enemies, cold, which can freeze and stun enemies. Warp is a more generalist utility spell that allows rapid changing of positions, with the benefit of allowing you to travel diagonally, a privilege that few cats enjoy. This is especially useful on the Mage, as they tend to be on the lower side health-wise. Moving over to some passives though, we can see a little bit more of the mana, AoE, and ailment-focused playstyles coming in here. Splash damage allows you to have AoE on your basic attack, which can be extremely powerful considering most cats won't have access to it, while Ice Paws and Lightning Paws allows you to add some elemental flair to your basic attacks with a chance to disable enemies and partially converting their damage type. Top Off also gives us an interesting look into the resource management part of the Mage, where, while you can have a large mana pool that you can save between turns, you could also opt for Top Off with more consistent, efficient, smaller damage spells turn to turn. Up next, the Tank. And who doesn't love a frontline brawler that can take plenty of punishment and punish you for trying to exist in his presence? From what we've seen, the Tank is easily the most crowd control, or CC for short, focused class. The Tank has several abilities that don't offer much upfront damage, but allow for disruption of the enemy and potential interplay with the environment. Fault Line allows you to move multiple units or enemies at once, potentially forcing them into damaging terrain as well as creating dirt tiles, which may destroy tiles that could be harmful to your team or beneficial to the enemies. Toss likewise allows you to move a unit where you desire, but if you're willing to have an ally take some damage, you could position them in a devastating flank that would normally be inaccessible. Bodyguard is a more support tank focused ability, which can combo with abilities like Chew Cud and Eat Rock to allow you to divert potentially fatal damage to the tank, who can shrug it off and offset the damage with a self-heal. These passives play into both the terrain manipulation and enemy displacement playstyle. Follow-up allows you to gain even greater utility off of your basic attack, moving the enemy, dashing back up to them, and keeping the pressure up. This can also help for positioning the enemy into the ideal spot for follow-ups from Fault Line or Toss and the like. Rock Aspect gives you the added tankiness through Shield, which is essentially extra temporary health, with the added benefit of potentially turning your enemies to stone. And yes, when they are stone, you can eat them with Eat Rock, because why wouldn't you be able to? Thunder Thighs allows you to trample through enemies, dealing damage and moving them when you move through them. Interestingly as well, there are also abilities or items that can give you Thorns, which deal damage to enemies attacking you, but have the added benefit of dealing damage when you throw your body into enemies. As an aside before we move to the next class, I love how the tank is looking from these abilities so far, as well as a few more I'll mention later. You can start to see the ridiculous levels of depth with relatively simple synergies within one class, but being able to interact with and manipulate the environment, your enemies, as well as being able to build your other cats to execute upon the strengths of another. For example, consider this. The Hunter has an ability called Tower Defense, which allows them to hit an enemy when they enter their attack range for 1. Not bad, a bit of free damage, right? But you'll probably only get that once per enemy per fight, if that. But what if the tank can move them in and out of your range multiple times with the push attack, toss, fault line, etc.? Well, then you've massively boosted the potential of this one skill. Now consider this. Poke. 2 mana for 1 damage from the fighter. Not the best considering that the punches we showed before can deal upwards of 10 damage, right? But what if you apply Bruise, a mechanic that allows you to deal 1 more damage for every individual instance of damage on an enemy? Now you have 2 damage for 2 mana, which is already significantly more efficient, especially on a spell that you could spam multiple times on a turn. But what if we brought that tower defense back in? Now we're multiplying the damage of all of these spammable effects by the Bruise. Not to mention that you can pull enemies into or out of the hunter's range with Leap while applying bruise. And there's a litany of other known and unknown skills that could interact with this, as well as potentially other ways to apply bruise, which I have to assume is not a one-off mechanic. I believe it's been shown somewhere else, but I can't find the skill. I'll insert a few more examples like this of interesting combos towards the end, but for now let's move on to the Cleric. The Cleric is a support / utility focused class that allows you to control the flow of life and death on the battlefield, healing your units, commanding them to attack on the Cleric's turn, leading the charge themselves, or even resurrecting your cats. Abilities like Grace and Rally Charge offer direct supportive effects to your allies, supplementing your basic attack, which can also heal. On the other hand, the Cleric can be as much a tactician as a strict support character, allowing them to force allies to attack with Rally, move to more advantageous positions for healing or damage with Call Over. The Cleric also, of course, has its own damaging abilities such as Holy Weapon, though from what we've seen so far, this is one of the only examples shown. But Edmund, the creator of the game, has said that damage-focused clerics are definitely possible. Moving on to the Thief, you can expect the Thief to be the fastest unit in your squad, with ways to move multiple times, attack multiple times, and pilfer plenty of loot while you're at it. Rearm and Move Again allow massive amounts of flexibility during your turn, being able to split up your damage and engage on multiple targets or engage and disengage in the same turn. A little bit of D&D rogue energy going on there. Greed Step plays into the Thief's loot-based playstyle while offering a unique form of mobility. Sharpen Nail, on the other hand, allows you to focus mana into buffing your attacks at the start of the battle in order to potentially fish for huge damage crits, if you feel like gambling.
Let's go gambling! Aw, dang it! Aw, dang it! Aw, dang it!
Looking at the passives, we can see that the Thief can automatically pick up money for the team with Loot Hoarder, instead of having to manually do so during the fights, though it could buff them up via Golden Claws. And of course with Critical, they also have some of the highest single target attack potential we've seen so far, especially if you can get it with Rearm. Note on the Thief, this is the class we've seen the least of so far, but theme-wise it's already one of my favorites. Now maybe drafting abilities from one class could feel a bit restrictive time to time, and although you can get skills from other classes through breeding, let's consider the universally available skills, colorless or neutral skills, which will show up less than your class-specific ones, but could be taken by any cat. There's no real way to categorize neutral skills into any one archetype, because they're meant to be general or fill specific niches, but let's look at a couple that I've seen with the most potential so far. Careful is a skill that allows you to ignore outgoing friendly fire on whatever cat you obtain it on. This would pair exceptionally well with something like Meteor Storm or Arrow Flurry, allowing you to group enemies onto your frontline cat and unleash on them without any concern of making the situation worse. This can also be particularly useful for lightning effects, which can chain to enemies through conductive materials like water. Might of the Meek makes it so that any damage 2 or below is critical. Hey, remember those 1 to 2 damage attacks from earlier? That would be pretty nice, especially if you could get a critical damage multiplier or an attack that hits multiple times for low damage, like Fury Swipes. How about Zenkai Boost? Though you usually don't want to get to that low HP, it has immense potential if you're feeling very confident during a run. Have a low HP character in a run where you're winning every fight relatively easily? Well, why not friendly fire your friend there to 1 HP? Maybe that's a bit optimistic. However, if you're struggling and that character is already low or happens to be on 1 HP, it has the added benefit of a full heal with a permanent stat bonus. Also, if you can maintain 1 HP, perhaps Death's Door could go insane together. But that's going to require a very specific setup and some optimism. Going into 2 more quick examples of goofy combos would be Thief with Alms for the Poor. You have to breed a cat with Alms for the Poor to achieve this, but dear lord, Healer Thief. What an amazing archetype I've never seen before. If anyone else has, let me know. I'd be extremely interested in the source material for that. As far as a team comp, an interesting idea would be a Hunter and a Mage with Quiver and Synthesize respectively. If you can assemble a good frontline with these 2 skills, you could scale your team amazingly over the course of the fight. That being said, there are rewards for beating the fights quickly, but if you play into this combo well, it may be that the loss of resources is offset by your consistent and safe strategy. Now, all this sounds fun and cool, and it seems like there's a lot going on already, right? Well, let's zoom out a bit. I screenshot about 110 skills for this video, and covered less than that, trying to only mention skills I had commentary on. Now, Each class, according to a few blog posts, and the Steam page is meant to have 75 skills. 75. That means everything I've looked at and you've seen in this video is less than 2 of the classes. We know 6 of the classes right now, and that's 450 skills, not counting neutral or colorless ones. And these are not all the classes. There are meant to be 1,000 skills. There could be upward of 10 classes with 75 unique skills each, and potentially more depending on how many neutral skills there are. We also don't even know the final count right now, as it is vaguely more than 1,000, meaning the figure could have shot past that mark and included a new class since the 1,000 was the original planned goal. Regardless though, if you told me there was 500 skills at launch with 7 classes, I would be extremely hyped. With this much content, I am floored. If you're as excited as I am and you want to keep up with news on Mewgenics, subscribe so you can see more of my content. As I said before, I also plan to branch out in the future. Also, as a side note, I will include in the description a link to a spreadsheet which has all the currently known classes, though some of them are speculative, skills, items, etc. I was not aware of the existence before screenshotting, so you may see some of the progress bars from Tyler Gleal's Twitch VOD. Apologies, but I will use other cleaner images in the future. Now, time for the new outro, which I plan to make part of my future videos as well. A bit of positivity. Do you ever feel a bit down and out, or things just can't seem to go your way? Everyone does sometimes, but just take a moment to think about the things that make you happy in life. No matter how small or silly you think it is, a game, your cat headbutting you, a cool walk in a fall breeze, a song, a book, a comic, a stuffed animal, or anything, just allow yourself to enjoy it. Remember, it's not silly if it helps you keep on trucking.
Driving down this lonesome road, burdened by a heavy load. Sand and asphalt are my friends, until this journey's at an end.